Hey guys, Greg here from 4Wheel Motion and GB Productions. Today I'm back on a truck I picked up a few weeks ago now. It's a 99 GMC Sierra 2500 HD with the 6-liter Vortec engine. It's a 4-speed automatic 4-wheel drive truck. Basically the front half of it is not of any value, needs cab corners, fenders are rotten, hood's got a rot hole in it. But the frame and the box and the tailgate are all basically like brand new. So the idea was to turn this truck into a box trailer ultimately. But I got into seeing if the engine would run at least, whether I decide to keep it and use it for a race car, as I think this is one of what they call the LS engines, similar to what's used in the Corvettes. So depending on what the computer programming entails, it might be worth, if I can get this running, putting it in some kind of a race car. So I gave it a try a couple weeks ago, and the starter that was on it is just too rough to make it go. It doesn't spin fast enough, and it kicks out as soon as the engine starts to speed up at all. So I went ahead and ordered a new starter, or probably not new, but it'll be remanufactured. It is Chinese based on the markings and the name, but it came from Rock Auto. I didn't want to spend a lot of money on this truck before I knew if the engine would even run at all. So this is a $75 starter. That's it. The total shipped to me in Ontario, Mid-Eastern Ontario here, was like $105 Canadian. So $75 starter and $30-ish in shipping and tax. Can't really beat that. So I'm going to pull off the old one and whip on this new one. And for now I've just got a booster cable lead. It's got a flat loop on the other end that's on the starter. I'm just going to use the same thing for the new one because all 3 of the wires going to the starter, the ends are corroded off. So in order to get that working in the future, that'll be a good chunk of wiring. So I'm just going to do this now to make it quick and easy. Do the cable there, and then I can just hook it up to the battery cable when I'm ready to try and start it. So these starters are actually very easy, a lot easier than the ones I'm accustomed to. It's just 2 bolts, and they go the opposite way to what you would think. They go across the starter body and just up into the engine block or the bell housing. So you just undo those 2 bolts. They're 1/2-inch hex, and you can lower it down, disconnect the wires, and away you go. Alright, so I got the truck jacked up a little bit on the front so that I can at least get under the frame rail here. So let's get to swapping the starter now, finally. The cardboard moves everywhere. Now, remember how I fed this in here. Should come out down through here, like so. And I got enough slack on my cable there that I should be able to pull it right out and work on it. All we're going to do now, I knotted this up previously so that the positive wouldn't short to anything by accident, because it's pretty much just a cobbled mess. That's what's left of the field wire going into the housing. It's supposed to be connected right there, I think. So yeah, there's basically nothing left. The solenoid is starting to separate from the rest of the starter just because it's bloated and it doesn't work at all. So the starter does spin, but not nearly fast enough for what we need to make this thing go. So I'm gonna swap the cable loop to the new starter, and then we can put it back in and give it a try. Okay, so just for right now, I'm just going to leave the positive battery post alone, leave all the hardware there, and I'm just going to loosen the nut on the other terminal that goes for the field wire, and I'm just going to put our cable loop under there as well. That way we know it's a good connection right to the field wire. So I just put this one together previously with a 1/4 inch bolt just to hold it tight, make a good connection. So I'll just whip that off here. Just like that. And keep all of this for another time in case we need to do something like that again. So this one is done. And then for the new one here, it's 9/16 nut. So just buzz that off. And the lock washer and the flat washer. And this was clean when I put it on the last time, so it's probably okay. And then to make life easy, I'm going to put it kind of facing toward where the top of the engine would be so that it doesn't get caught on the exhaust or anything like that. Kind of like that. Can't get the wrench on it now, of course, but that's okay. Just like that. So we're ready to fish that back up in there and then we can try it. Alright, so here we go. Now in my experience, putting something together is never as easy as taking it apart. So this will probably take a little bit longer for me to fuss in there, especially since the truck is pretty low to the ground. But I will give it my best here. Actually, I'm going to shorten up the cable a bunch there before I get under there. Well, it would appear already that this starter is not the same, so I might not even be able to make this work. So much for looking up the exact vehicle and picking the one I wanted. The mounting is different. Looks like it needs 2 bolts that are the same length, which I don't have. I only have what was in it. So, try it here and see. Missed the memo, but this starter is supposed to have 2 long bolts, which again I don't have, so we'll have to try it like this, and if it works, great. If it doesn't, then I guess I gotta hunt for a bolt. Well, only one way to find out, I guess. Get stuff cleaned up here and we'll give it a try, I guess. Haha, I'm just not very smart, that's all. So this other bolt was actually in the box underneath the cardboard, and I didn't see it when I took the starter out, but this is exactly what we need. So I'm gonna go ahead and put that in, and then we'll try this, and we should have a much higher chance of success. Okay, so I feel much better about that starter now with 2 proper length bolts in there and tightened and secured. I got the cable for starting there ready to go, and we'll hook up to Big Blue here and see what happens. Alright, so it should be decent connection, so here goes nothing, I guess. So, new problem. I think the Bendix drive on this starter requires the solenoid to get powered in order for it to engage, which makes my life more difficult than it needs to be, but that's just spinning right now, so I will see if I can get a jumper set up to the solenoid, and then we'll try it again. Alright, so I've got a jumper wire from the small terminal on the solenoid to our power at the same time here, and we'll just see. So that is in fact what we needed. Stupid design, but some are like that. Some starters you gotta have the solenoid. Some starters, like the one I just took off, it's just an RPM thing for the Bendix to engage. I was expecting this one to be the same style as the original one, but again, it was made in China, or remanufactured in China, so who knows whether it's actually 100% correct specs or not. But anyway, so we've got crank now. I'm gonna try to get it going with Big Blue shut off here, because you're not going to be able to hear much of anything if it's running. So we'll give it a try. With the Cummins just boosting, it might not be enough power to begin with because we've got such shaky connections here, but we'll give it a try. So I had previously set up here a fuel pump, because these ones have to have, these are whatever you want to call it, rail fuel pressure system. So it does have to have constant pressure to the fuel rail, and then the computer tells the injectors when to open and close. It's not based on pressure, it's based on timing. And if your pressure supply is not sufficient, then when it opens the injector, that cylinder isn't going to fire properly, or might not fire at all. But so I've got a lift pump out of, I think it's out of an Explorer. The pump in this I'm pretty sure is shot, which is a known problem with them. So I've got that pump set up with jumper wires, and I've got a canister of gas here that I was trying the last time. So, and I've got a return line plumbed back to the can, because otherwise it eats the fuel in a hurry. But what I did notice the last time is it never took any fuel out of here. So to me that says the injectors aren't opening. So we'll give it a try again here and see what happens. Alright, so we got feed through the pump and return from the rail back to the can, so that we don't lose any more fuel than we have to. And I got the key, so try and get this jumper to a place that it's not going to be in the way for cranking it. Positive. Negative can go wherever because there's no clamp on that side. And the pump goes screaming away there. Solid fuel coming back in the return line. Should have more than enough fuel in there to make it go if it's going to try. Alright, so turn the key on and here goes nothing. excuse me while I melt my booster cables here. So absolutely nothing out of it there. When I was trying it before, I could at least get it to spark on quick start. It could be just that with the intake off now and the butterfly wide open there, it's getting so much air, it's not enough to make it try. Crack the butterfly open there a bit and give it a bit and see if it tries, I guess. Otherwise, the next step will be to go through all the spark plugs, gap them, try and check if they all work and if all the coils are working, and then try it again. The ignition system has somehow stopped working since the last time I worked on it, which doesn't seem likely. Or got no plugs, I guess. So the next step would be I'll probably start with the driver's side here. They're easier to access. Pull all 4 plugs out, check the condition of them, look up what the plug gap spec is, and see if I can get any of them to show spark just holding the plug against a piece of casting. Okay, so in this particular one anyways, whichever plug the previous owner decided to put in, it's a 5/8 socket. If you have a proper spark plug socket, great. If not, I'm just using a normal one. I usually find that the little rubber piece inside the spark plug socket that's supposed to hold the spark plug in the socket for you just comes out on the plug, so it's not really of much value. I've got 3 of the 4 wires off here. I'm just going to try to get the last one off. That. And then we'll pull all of the plugs on this side of the engine. In this case, my deep socket is about 1/4 of an inch too shallow to be able to get right over the hex, so I have to pop the socket out of the extension a little bit, kind of use it halfway to make it work, just because I'm limited with the tools I have here. So yeah, I'm sure what we're going to find is that all these plugs are massively over-gapped just from wear. A quick search of the Google said that for this engine, gap should be about 40 to 44 thousandths of an inch. So I'm probably going to aim for like 36 or 38, because if the spark happens to be weak on any of the cylinders, then not making it jump quite so far, I have a better chance of it running. So I think my gauge only does 35 and 40, so I'll probably do 35 and make it a fat 35. That one's a little bit wet, number one. Whichever cylinder is the furthest forward on the engine is labeled as number 1. And if you look at the engine, any V8 engine, you would think that the cylinders are right across from one another, but if you know anything about the mechanics of the crankshaft and all that jazz, then you know they can't be right opposite one another. They don't fit. So whichever cylinder is furthest forward in the vehicle is usually labeled as number 1. Getting really good at taking my skin off on rusty metal here. I would wear gloves, but it's so hard to feel what's going on and know what you're doing when you got gloves on, so chew the skin off it is for now. That one, if you can see, is actually close to the color it should be. It should be like a light coffee brown color if it's actually running. So looks like, what's that one? 135, number 5 might actually be running properly. The other ones so far are not looking too good, so. That one is also soaked in fuel or oil or both, so I would say only one of the spark plugs on this side of the engine was even firing. So I guess we'll start with gapping them all, find out what they're at. I'm interested to know. I'm sure it's huge compared to what it should be. Got my tool at 35 here, and it goes through without even trying, like there's space in there. So I'm gonna go, I think the biggest one I've got is 40, so I can't even find out how big it is, but it's 40 will just squeeze through. So they're not as big as I was expecting them to be. At least that's number 1 anyways. So anyway, the easiest way to close the gap up a little bit, you don't have to use pliers or anything. You just look for a piece of casting on the engine. In fact, the alternator would probably work. And you're just gonna tap it. It does not take very much to move it at all. Hitting it square and true would be good, but. So that's already got it closed down to the point where the 35 won't go through. So then I'm just going to gently work the 35 through here a few times until something like that. Okay, so those were not nearly as wide a gap as I was expecting. So I'm thinking probably our issue is we don't have any spark to the plugs. Otherwise, it should have run at least on 4 cylinders, provided that the injectors will open. So these are NGK TR5 GPs. I have no idea what this particular engine is supposed to have. Ultimately, a plug is a plug, as long as it works. Again, there are certain ups and downs to different plug types and models, mainly talking about the heat range. Hotter plug burns the fuel more efficiently, more power out of it. But you can go for a cooler plug, doesn't burn as much fuel, it's a little more efficient. So there's that balance to look at, but in this case I'm just going to go with what's in here. All 4 of these are the same, so I'm going to go ahead and say that these are at least one of the options for what's supposed to be in here. So I am going to now try and see if I can use, we'll start with number 1 wire here and see if we can get any spark out of it. Now for this you might want to have 3 hands, but if you can get it to sit somewhere close to a piece of casting like that, probably not going to be able to see it on camera, but we'll see if we can get a spark out of it. Or not. We're going to have to come up with a better way to do this. So there was absolutely no spark out of that. Now it's possible, I guess, that I wouldn't think so, but it's possible that this ignition system has a safety on it that won't let it fire unless the plug is grounded, I guess. But I can't imagine. I can't imagine. I'm talking about a 2000 here, not a 2020, not a 2050. So there's nothing there for spark whatsoever. I do not believe that all four would be bad, but who knows, I guess. Nothing. So I guess it's possible that there is a safety like I spoke of a little earlier. I'm going to do a little more research and find out if there's an easier way to check if our coils are working, aside from trying to do that. And then we'll try again.